Chippendale's Treehouse is a special kind of attraction. It is here that guests will not only travel up a set of stairs, but travel down a second staircase as well. It's a true peak to man's achievements. Does that answer your question, Monkey? Of course, Chippendale's Treehouse will be better with a Paul Frees narration. I have a better question for you, Monkey. Which Disneyland attraction would actually be worse with a Paul Frees narration? I'm sure there's some. Anyways, all right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. It is I, Tiki, and this is essentially the last word on my Disneyland trip. I uploaded a couple vlogs, one on Galaxy's Edge, and the other just kind of like literally I recorded it at the tail end of when I was in the park. It did not go well. Did not go particularly well. I have kind of like, I've been on a little bit of a journey of self-discovery in my fandom of the Disney parks. But I have come to some conclusions about the way that Disney is running things compared to the way that some of their competitors are running things. And we will talk over that. Monkey, I know you're in the comments. Obviously, you pretty much know all my thoughts as it is. But, you know, if you want to ask me anything, then by all means, I have right up here, ask me anything about Disneyland, Universal, or not. By all means, guys, if you're watching this, I really do want this to be kind of like an audience participation sort of stream. So if you do have questions or comments, I would like to hear them. But let's get things started with the main event, which is trying this thing. If y'all don't know, this is a part of a series of candies that Toontown came out with, and they are all exactly like the candies that are at the concession stand of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway lobby. And so let's just, ooh, wow, it's a lot more neon than I thought it would be. Let's give it a try. Look at how neon that is. Yeah. It's funny. I have one souvenir from Disneyland, one souvenir from Knott's, and one souvenir from Universal. That's kind of where my getup comes from. Also want to just state for the record, I'm not really a candy person in general. I bought this way more for just like the actual, packaging, which now that I say that, I literally just like ripped off the main like power line of it all. I should have got it from the other side. How many artificial colors are in that? I don't know, Priest. This is very artificial looking. Dare I say this is more artificial looking than that dreaded blue drink from Applebee's. Flavor profiling is, yeah, it definitely packs a punch. It's definitely lime, for sure. I'm not the biggest lime guy either. I like lemon lime, but just not lime by itself. It's solid. It's solid. I don't know what I was expecting from this. I mean, I'm not Brad Jones. I can't just like do a full video of like, oh yes, let's eat this. Literally, it's just an excuse to actually get on here and talk about Disney. Oh, that's gonna stick in my mouth. Also, I'm very biased when it comes to taffy because I am very close by the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, which was literally the birthplace of saltwater taffy. So it's like, if it's not saltwater taffy, I find it hard to engage with, honestly. Monkey saying I'm having a hard time thinking of an attraction that wouldn't benefit from Paul Frees' narration. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something where it just tonally would not fit, like Superstar Limo, perhaps. Anyways, everyone knows the red, blue, and purple flavors are the best of any fruit snacks. Yeah, blue in particular. I know if you don't care for taffy, that doesn't like dill pickles. Oh God, This is taffy that is kind of colored like a dill pickle. Does that count? Anyways. All right, so Z and K, I see you're here. This is basically just like, I know it says on the title of this video, it's Tiki tries power limes. It's really not the focus of this video. And also, Priest, you're asking me about California Adventure. I should probably clarify. This trip, I did not do DCA. That just goes to show you how uncompelling Avengers Campus is. I just really could not be bothered with it. I didn't even miss it. I really didn't. I was having a hard enough time trying to navigate Disneyland Park. I literally had no time to even bother with DCA. Now I have this kind of organized into like a series of thoughts, but by all means, Z and K, as I was saying, like this is kind of like a stream of conscious of just my final thoughts on Disneyland as a whole. Yes, Monkey, if Rogers was open, and if I've heard some, I don't want to get into it, Monkey. I've heard some mixed things about what Rogers may or may not be. If it actually ends up being good, that would absolutely push me over the edge to do DCA for sure. Even though I can't imagine the crowd levels for Rogers, that would have sucked. That would have sucked. So I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing that Rogers was not open. Okay, so let's start with Toontown, because I haven't really talked about that. And generally speaking, I mean, get ready for some positivity, because it's going to be one of the few times in this vlog I'm positive about, at least as far as Disney goes. I think the Toontown renovation was honestly spectacular. I really do. I kind of love it. There's some folks who are like, oh, well, you can't go into Donald's boat now. Doesn't matter. Those porthole interactive elements with the DuckTales characters, just way, way, way more engaging than anything that ever used to be in Donald's boat. Goofy's Playground, Monkey can attest to this. I couldn't resist going down the rolly slides. I literally could not resist. And they were fun. They were legitimately solid fun. That whole land is just filled with Easter eggs, filled with interactive elements. It really is kind of like more of that sort of old school Disney design philosophy. I love the music loop in Toontown now. I've heard it described as essentially a spa version of Disney afternoon themes, which is very accurate. And I dig it. It's great. I will say Toontown at night, that's the time to go to Toontown. That park just absolutely sings at night, as does every part of Disneyland. But for some reason, Toontown just feels more approachable at night too. I feel like a lot of the crowds kind of hit it up like in the middle of the day, especially the families and everything. So like I got onto Runaway Railway in about 30 minutes at around 9 p.m. So, that like when that ride is usually about 45 minutes to an hour, that's a pretty good deal. Okay, I love how, from what I've seen, they're more comfortable with referencing Disney afternoon stuff now. Absolutely, Z and K. I only hope that we eventually do get a full-blown Disney afternoon attraction. I mean, we technically have the Gadget Coaster, but like, come on, it's off the shelf. I would be, something like a DuckTales dark ride. Actually, this is going to be a hot take. This is going to be a super duper hot take. Monkey has not even heard this take. I actually don't necessarily think that Cartoon Spin fits the area all that well anymore. I think that kind of like the film noir vibes that Cartoon Spin gives off, it just kind of clashes with the rest of the land. So, super hot take. I know this is going to be super unpopular, but replace Cartoon Spin with a DuckTales dark ride? I know that nobody actually would probably want that. Cartoon Spin, Roger Rabbit's a very beloved IP for park people, but I don't know. Make a whole Roger Rabbit park. I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's there's never really been that much of a film noir vibe to Toontown, but especially with what they've done with it now, the film noir vibes definitely kind of clash a little bit tonally. So yeah, super unpopular opinion, but okay, Monkey says they may not have made an extra Galaxy's Edge entry, but the old Toon Treehouse spot does offer a hidden corner to sit in. That's true. It is a nice little kind of shaded area for sure. I still wish there was a walkway though. I don't know, just for the sake of my feet, if anything else. And also just to justify walking all the way back to Toontown. I just feel like both Toontown and Galaxy's Edge kind of feel like they're very much on the outskirts of the park. And so just connecting those two, I don't know, I think it'd do wonders for just the overall like traffic flow, especially when you consider that Toontown can get very congested. I think having a way for people to go out of that land and into Galaxy's Edge would just really help with the foot traffic. So yeah, that's overall my experiences with Toontown as a whole. Let's talk briefly about Runaway Railway. And I don't have any crazy hot takes about Runaway Railway. It's fantastic. I mean, the queue itself is like just as good as I thought it would be, although I will say it was not the best queue that I saw this trip. That honor would go to Mario Kart. I think Mario Kart is the greatest theme park queue I have ever experienced. That's just my opinion, but I don't know. There's just something about the way that queue flows together that just very much like feels like a full-blown experience in its own right. The fish in the gadget queue don't compel you enough to walk all the way back to that corner of Toontown. No, I never did the extended section. I actually only did the railway like standby once, because the one time that you and I did it, Rob, we obviously pretty much rope dropped it. And then the one time that my grandma and I did it, we did it with Lightning Lane. So I only did the standby once. So I never did go through the extended like backstage queue. And I will say that if that line was extending, I always say this, but my philosophy when it comes to like standby lines and wait times and stuff, if the physical line is hard to find the entrance for, I generally don't mess with it. That was a problem I was having with Alice. Alice was very hard to get on this trip. Because every time I would walk by it, the line would just stretch all the way out, kind of like going sort of like along the wall near the bathrooms, kind of like, it would almost be like a line, like kind of like on the opposite side of the Matterhorn. And I'm like, that's a fucking nightmare, dude. So yeah, Runaway Railway, fantastic. Honestly, what really, like, obviously the queue stands out a lot with Railway, but what else stands out about the ride is just the minor improvements that they made to the attraction itself. I'm talking specifically the fact that the opening room is in its own room and not like kind of attached to the loading area like it is in Hollywood Studios. And then also, I don't know, man, there's something about that final tunnel leading into the park, that tunnel that's not in the Hollywood Studios version. Between the goofy stuff, which is probably the best humor in the whole attraction, I think, and the music, it's serene. It's genuinely like a great Disney park moment. I kind of equate it to like, it's not quite to the level of the two I'm going to mention, but it's kind of like in that same vein of just very serene atmosphere is like the opening of Radiator Springs Racers, like the Sunday Drive portion of that ride. And then also the Topiary Gardens, A Small World. Kind of in that vein of just relaxing and chill. Of course, the ride takes place in Wonderland was difficult to figure out. Yeah. I really dig how the front car makes sure to point you towards Pluto and the Stampede Room. It's interesting. I never really gauged that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, that's what like when it comes to attractions that are, cloned. I'm not asking for much. Just the minor elements that they added to this version of Railway was enough for me. Whereas I still feel like with Galaxy's Edge, the fact that Galaxy's Edge was literally, it basically feels like someone took copy and paste on Roller Coaster Tycoon and just literally plopped down the entire Galaxy's Edge footprint into Hollywood Studios. Like, I don't like how that area feels exactly the same in Hollywood Studios, with the very notable exception of the fact that the placemaking is crap compared to Disneyland. I have a whole vlog kind of talking about how I love the placemaking of Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland and how I think that really kind of is what makes the difference for me when it comes to Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland versus Hollywood Studios. Watch that vlog for more. I'm not really going to go into that now. So yeah, I've sung the praises of Toontown, so let's talk some shit. All right. It's oh, God. I will say this much. Straight up, I am not returning to Disneyland until I hear consistently that the operations have gotten better. I refuse. I realize that breakdowns are a thing that happens at parks and you can't control them, and they're going to happen at every park. The level of breakdowns that I saw on my trip that just happened to be like 3 random days, and it was not an isolated incident, because I've been hearing issues about this for like literally pretty much the better part of a calendar year, if not longer. Essentially, I think they've been having issues with this since they came back from the shutdown. It's bad, guys. It's really bad. I mean, even attractions that normally just are workhorses and don't go down at all. Like, I saw Pirates down for basically a whole evening one night. That was bad. Like, just randomly stuff would go down. I mean, and what really sucks about that is it adds a level of anxiety to standby waits, and honestly, even to lightning lanes to a certain extent, depending on how long the lightning lane is. If I'm being honest with you guys, I legitimately think it's just sheer dumb luck that Indy never broke down when I was trying to get on it. Just sheer dumb luck. I cannot express how stupidly lucky I feel that I was able to get, like, I think grand total of times I did Indy, I think was 4, because I rope dropped it once and then I lightning laned it all 3 of the days. So yeah, that was lucky. I mean, Splash, and not only are the breakdowns a problem, the state of the attractions is a problem. Splash is in terrible shape, and frankly, I think they should have just closed it instead of letting it run in its current shape. And honestly, I think it's a shame that my last impression of Splash is going to be in the state that it was in. I honestly would rather just hold on to the memories that I had of Splash before that. Because, guys, it's terrible. It looks terrible. I mean, it's bad. It's awful. It genuinely makes me sad that they're running Splash in that state. The other really big one for me that stood out was actually Big Thunder, which was very surprising to me, considering Big Thunder had just come back. It wasn't a long refurb at all, but it was down for a couple weeks. So there were a couple major things with Big Thunder. Number one, this is pretty prominent for me because I think it really adds a lot to like the overall sense of grandeur on that first lift hill. The waterfall is just turned off. And so it's like when you're going up that first lift, it's nothing. I don't know. I just think that waterfall just adds like a sense of kinetic energy, a sense of scale. And it's just not there. And then I don't know what the hell's going on with the Dynamite Room. From what I've heard, the smoke effect hasn't worked in a long time. That's a damn shame. But the Dynamite room just looks rough. I mean, it's not as bad as the Earthquake room in Florida, but it's not great. And the sad excuse of a projection mapping effect they have for the Dynamite explosion now in lieu of the smoke is honestly kind of pathetic. Okay, I'm going to read some comments now, guys. I appreciate the engagement. Priest says it sounds like Disneyland is operating very different from Tokyo Disneyland. Over there, a cast member won't sleep if an animatronic. Yeah, Priest, I kid you not. Literally every attraction that had animatronics, there were at least a couple of them that were just down. I love Small World to death, and it's not in as rough of a shape as it is in Florida, but there were whole sections of Small World that were pretty much just dark. Yeah, it wasn't great. Okay, ZNK says, I'll say about the Cartoon Spin update, I don't mind giving Jessica more to do, but only if they actually did something with it in regards to Chapek's time or not. Yeah, the Jessica Rabbit stuff in Cartoon Spin, I mean, I'm one of those people that actually kind of digs the yellow trench coat. I dig it as kind of like a Dick Tracy homage. And frankly, I don't really like the whole political side of that is just kind of exhausting for me, and I don't feel like engaging with that discussion. But it seems very superfluous, though. It really doesn't seem like much was changed in the attraction outside of that. Okay. I feel guilty about having a better final ride on Splash than you. Rob, I'm sorry, but how the hell did you have a better final ride on Splash than... I mean, granted, yes, there was that thing that I told you about where literally my last impression of Splash was like, I was just standing at the exit, like not even lingering. I was just trying to put my jacket on, and the cast member was like, go, go, go. You know, they were like rushing me out. I mean, it wasn't that militant, but I still didn't appreciate it. But I mean, Rob, like, surely you must agree that at the very least, the state that Splash was in was pretty sad, right? Okay. ZNK says, unless they're saving for some other subtle updates, that was needless. I know we're past Toontown, but that seemed like a noteworthy mention. The solution to Florida's version of Earthquake is clearly a party bus. Yes. Just literally you go into the lift hill and the party bus is just parked on the side of the hill. Exactly. All right. Anyways. Okay. So, yeah, with the ride breakdowns, and honestly, even as far as like the actual atmosphere of the park, like the landscaping and the amount of trash and stuff like that, even that is kind of lacking. I'll say this right now. I think Knott's Berry Farm was just as well landscaped, if not better landscaped, than Disneyland was currently. I'll say that right now. I was actually really impressed with how good Knott's was looking. Like with Knott's Berry Farm, there's literally like the one area of that park that still needs some work is the area that's kind of like basically from the Sky Tower to Supreme Scream. Like that chunk could use a little work. Other than that, Knott's is looking fantastic. Okay, so let's see. So breakdowns, clearly an issue. Let's talk crowd control, because that is also definitely a blatant issue. Here's my thing with crowd control. I don't mind waiting in lines at Disney. I expect to wait in lines at Disney. I don't mind it being crowded at Disney. I expect it to be crowded at Disney. What I don't appreciate, and I've been saying that, like, I've been using this basic, like, kind of common selling point as, like, a main argument. There was a moment where I was just trying to mobile order something from Jolly Holiday. And it was like, on the mobile order, it was like, we are preparing your order. Please find a spot to sit and relax. And I'm just, like, literally looking at, like, all the tables filled with people. The entire Coke Corner, Jolly Holiday, all the tables were full. And it was like 9 o'clock at night, something like that. It wasn't even like peak meal time or anything. And in that moment, that is kind of like where it sort of snapped with me. Like, this is just not the same. I'm going to get a little bit back in my day with this, if y'all don't mind. I don't know. I just feel like the park experience, and I blame a variety of different factors for this. I honestly think social media has a lot of blame in it because, and this isn't even necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's not like I can fault people for, pointing out the cool shit that Disneyland has to offer. A good example of that is the walkway in between the Harbor Galley and Splash Mountain, that little walkway overlooking the river that used to never have people on it was now just totally congested. That's a good example. I think Snow White's Grotto and the Main Street Cinema and places like that are a good example of like places where you used to be able to just reliably go and escape the crowds have now just been they've just kind of been sucked into the overall just hype that is Disneyland as a whole for people. And part of me appreciates the fact that more people than ever are appreciating those elements of the park. But I also don't think, generally speaking, that anybody going to the park right now, no matter what you are, no matter what your experience level is, generally speaking, I don't even think it's possible to have an experience like the park was designed for. And spontaneous is the word that comes to mind. From top to bottom, with the way that the app is set up, and even if you try not to use the app, if you go out of your way to not use your app, it's just you're just not getting your money's worth at that point. But if you're using the app, your face is going to be in the phone. One of the things that drove me crazy with the app is everyone was chasing those low wait times. So you would look up, let's say you're in Fantasyland, and you see that Pirates is at a 15-minute wait, right? By the time you actually walk over from Fantasyland to Pirates, that wait time is going to balloon up to 30, 40 minutes because literally 2,000 other people using that damn app will see that Pirates is at 10 minutes. That 10-minute wait is not going to stay at 10 minutes. You guys understand what I'm saying? It's almost dumb luck if you have, like, at that point, I was honestly not even really, I was more relying on just, the old school way to gauge wait times, which is just walk by and see how crowded the queues look. And just generally speaking, trying to find places to sit, trying to find tables to eat at. I mean, again, like with the back in my day, like if the Coke Corner Pianist was playing and you happen to walk by, awesome. Chill, grab a seat, grab a hot dog. It was like, I used to love seeing the Coke Corner Pianist. Nowadays, I bet you anything that people stake out tables to go see the Coke Corner piano player at least probably a solid half hour in advance. And they do that for freaking everything. I'm not even saying that's a bad approach. I'm just saying that kills the spontaneity. You guys know what I'm saying, though? Like, I feel like because everyone is so glued into micromanaging their time, the spontaneity of just showing up somewhere and something is happening and just stopping for a while is gone. I also want to talk about some of my two of my disabilities that were kind of big factors this trip. And frankly, I don't really feel like Disneyland accommodates very well. Number one is the social anxiety / overstimulation. I don't want to talk too much about it, but I am on the autism spectrum. And so for me, just having a quiet place like a Harbor Galley walkway or a Snow White's Grotto or a Main Street Cinema or something like that, where I could just reliably get away from the crowds if I did get overstimulated and overwhelmed, that shit was literally priceless. And that shit just don't exist anymore. In the parks, there is just no area to reliably go and destimulate. And you guys don't even know how, how valuable that would be. I remember not this trip, but my last trip, I was actually so overwhelmed with the crowds that I popped into first aid just to have a quiet place to relax. And they will do that for you. If like that would be the place to go is first aid to just ask them for a quiet room to relax, assuming that they're just not overwhelmed, which honestly at this point, given what I saw, I just assume that first aid is going to be as fucking packed as everywhere else in the park. But assuming that they actually have a room to spare, that is a good option. But I don't want to rely on that. And I would love for there to actually be spots in the park, even if they're unthemed, right? Like, I don't know, even if it's just like something as simple as like a nice set of benches under a tree or something. Just the park needs places like that. It's not like there's a former arcade space near the exit of Space Mountain that can be converted into a quiet area. That would be great. I mean, I would honestly even love for them to use the Magic Eye Theater for literally anything. I will even take just using it for promotional stuff like they used to, because honestly, anything in that theater is better than nothing, and that theater used to be one of those like means in which I would go. Honestly, right now the only place I can think of is legitimately Mr. Lincoln, which is my number one Disneyland attraction, so it's not like that's a bad thing. But with Mr. Lincoln, you have to commit to walking all the way to practically the exit of the park, so it's not like that's a convenient option. Yeah, and I mean, even stuff like picking up the mobile orders is overwhelming because I have social anxiety really bad. I'm always anxious about getting in people's way, and it's hard for me to be assertive in crowded settings. And I'm telling you guys, with mobile orders sometimes, if you hit it at the wrong time, you basically have to be assertive if you want to get anywhere. And that sucks. Okay. Yeah, honestly, Priest, you say they should have posted it at 35 minutes. These things would have smoothed out. You know what I noticed Universal does that I really appreciate is Universal actually inflates their wait times pretty regularly. And I kind of figured that out pretty quick into my Florida trip. And I genuinely love that philosophy because it's like, if you're going in, like I had like 2 or 3 rides on Hagrid's where the posted wait time was like 80 minutes and I ended up waiting maybe 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm tempted to mention Sensory Area D23 Expo. That also required me a D23 operating somewhat better than the parks. That's sad if that's the case. That is really sad. I think WW and honestly, Priest, like when it comes to Six Flags and Cedar Fair, I find their wait time apps to just be useless. But WDW, I could see them inflating wait times. At Disneyland, and honestly, I think the main reason why it was an issue at Disneyland was just because the operations are so crap. For all I know, if it weren't for the operations, the wait times might not have been inflated. All right. I think Tokyo and Disney inflates a half a lump. Okay, so let's see. I think that's about all I have to say for crowds. Let me talk about another disability that I have that I felt very isolated with trying to deal with in the parks. Monkey knows what I'm talking about. He knows it very well. I have a foot condition. I think it's something to do with my calf muscle where I can walk all day. Like, it's really not a problem for me to walk. But when it comes to standing in one spot, I have a really hard time. It's pretty much made it to the point where doing stuff like castle viewing for the fireworks, or I've never even tried to do World of Color, anything that's going to require me to like stand in a large crowd of people. for a long period of time, I basically physically can't do. And this didn't used to be that much of an issue at Disneyland. But with the lightning lanes, I will say this. The lightning lanes, if you're actually using them, they work great. They really do. I mean, I genuinely think it's probably, for the people that are using them, it's probably a more efficient system than the old school Fast Pass. That being said, the big drawback with lightning lanes is they just kill the standby wait. Fast Pass made the standby waits bad. Lightning lanes have turned the standby waits into literal, like, all I can say is that the term standby is accurate because you are just standing there for long chunks at a time. And so I found there to be a distinct lack of accommodation at Disneyland when it came to this issue on my end. Basically, the only option I had was to rent an electric wheelchair. And I have so much social anxiety that that's just never going to happen for me. I would have to be in a really bad position physically to resort to that. Just because I know that I come off very able-bodied. Like, I'm young-ish. I'm tall, like, if you look at me on the surface, you don't think that I'm going to be having a lot of physical issues. And also just navigating those queues with a wheelchair and just generally speaking being an inconvenience for people. It's just not something I can mess with. And Rise of the Resistance kind of works with, like once you get into the caves, they have those actual, like, that's great. Like the seating in the Rise of the Resistance queue, genuinely, when I saw that, it was like one of the most inclusive moments I have ever had at a Disney park. I felt seen in that moment. But yeah, I mean, for a lot of it, like, and even stuff that doesn't have lightning lane, like the Fantasyland dark rides, for example, they just load so slowly. And even stuff like the Fantasyland dark rides, which again used to be very reliable workhorse style attractions that would very seldomly break down. They weren't breaking down all the time, but they were definitely breaking down. So, it's always just an issue of anxiety when it comes to those breakdowns, plus the standing factor. I have one more critique of Disney, and I have said this on other vlogs. I have posted it on WDW Magic. I just want to go over it one more time. And I just want to, again, start with the disclaimer that when I say this, I am not trying to single out any one cast member or even say that cast members in general are doing a bad job, because they're not. I just think that it's a shitty work environment, a very bad work environment. And I can tell that it's a bad work environment by the looks on the cast members' faces, by their body language, and how stressed out they were. There's something about it. There's something going on. There's something in the air. I don't know if it's the wages or the hours they're working or what, but I can tell you guys, I have very contrasting cast member experiences between Disney and Universal, and I'll get into that kind of towards the end of this. With Disney, it's like, again, I'm not trying to single out. There really was no moment where I was like, oh, fuck that cast member. Like that, like even in moments that were really frustrating, like the Splash Mountain being shooed away because I was trying to put on my jacket, I just got the feeling that was just a cast member, again, who was overworked and overstressed. I also, like, in my time waiting for Alice, which was about 40 minutes, I saw no less than 3 or 4 different, like, entitled Karen mothers go up to the exit and basically try and spin a sob story like, I was in line for this the other day and it broke down and I demand that you let me on it. And I just think with the way that people are on social media, like, again, social media, I do think is a big cause for this. People, especially at Disney, are acting more entitled. I also think it's kind of a class thing because Disney they more or less have kind of priced out the lower class. And so the people that do go there tend to be well off. And I'm not saying that all well off people are rude, but I am saying that there is a little bit of a disconnect there when it comes to, treating people with respect on certain occasions that I noticed. So just, I don't know, like I said, it's not like I didn't have any positive cast member interactions, and it's not like I had any cast member interactions that were like blatantly terrible. I could just feel the stress. And man, as someone who's an empath who experiences a lot of like secondhand anxiety for other people, that was not a good environment. That was not a good like feeling for me. It was not a good scene. It was honestly a pretty major factor for why I was unable to enjoy myself, more or less. In contrast, Universal, man. I have been so impressed with the Universal cast members on both coasts over the past calendar year. I have had some remarkable experiences with Universal cast members. I've gone through all these before, but I'll just kind of quickly do like a bullet points of a few really like amazing moments that I had on my Florida trip. So number one, at the airport, I was kind of lost and struggling to find the pickup drop-off area for Uber, which I was planning to use to get to my hotel. And so I decided to go up to the Universal, the transportation kiosk at Universal, and ask if I could pay to take one of the Universal buses over to my hotel because I was staying at Endless Summer. You know what the guy did? He comped my tickets for that bus. No questions asked. I mean, that is just incredible. That saved me like $40 right there. And then there was a moment, like this was probably one of the best cast member interactions I've ever had at any theme park. The Velocicoaster lockers can get pretty crowded, can get a little overstimulating. And what I was talking about with the whole, like, you can't I have a hard time when you can't figure out where the end of the line is. So it's like how those lockers work is that you put the stuff in the lockers and then you line up to go through the metal detectors that then lead you up to the station. I was having a hard time because the line was so long for the metal detectors that I wasn't sure if it was a line for the metal detectors or just a line of people trying to get into the locker area. And I went up to a cast member who was there, and I was a little bit panicked. Like, I wasn't like full-blown panic attack mode, but it was pretty obvious I was having some anxiety issues. And I was just kind of like, I basically just wanted to know where the line to the metal detector was, and if this line of people was just trying to get into the area or if they were lined up for the metal detectors. You know what this guy does? He puts me straight on the handicap elevator, right up to the station. No questions asked. Even when I saw that line was in fact for the metal detectors, and even when I told him like, oh, okay, it's for the metal detectors. All right, I'm good. The guy's like, no, you're stressed out. I'm going to get you on this ride right away. I mean, I still am blown away by that. And then going as far as like, I love the the Bourne stunt show in Florida. And it's genuinely probably the best theme park stunt show I've ever seen. The only problem is that it's got one of the worst pre-shows I've ever been in regards to standing in a large crowd for about 10 minutes. So I went up to the person at the entrance because I wanted to watch it again on my last day. Told them about my foot issue. No questions asked. They just let me chill in the in the queue area once everyone had been filtered through the queue into the pre-show. And then once the pre-show was done, they escorted me through into the handicap seating section. I mean, it's like, it wasn't even an issue. It wasn't even like, the thing with Disney that was really fucking with me is that I genuinely felt like even if I was having an issue, like, for example, there were a couple times when I was trying to do mobile order and it was telling me, like, there's been an issue with the app. Please see a cast member. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, no. Oh, why are you doing this to me, Disney? Social anxiety, son of a bitch. And every time I would just get the feeling like, and again, it's not that they were rude about it at all, but I did get the feeling that anytime I asked anything at Disney, because Disney cast members were just dealing with so many people all the damn time, I got the feeling that every time I would ask something at all, I was putting them out of their way. Universal, completely different story, man. Completely different vibe. And that goes into kind of like my final sort of experience for this vlog. So if you guys have any other kind of questions or general comments, get them in. I'll probably talk for another 5 minutes or so. Let's talk Super Nintendo World. I will admit that I'm pretty sure the day that I went, I think it was a combination of I was smart enough to not just go there at Park Open. We took our time getting down there. We did Secret Life of Pets. We did the studio tour, Jurassic World, Mummy, cracked all those out before going to Super Nintendo World. I didn't get in there until probably a little after noon-ish. But I've heard horror stories about how congested Super Nintendo World is as far as crowds. And it wasn't like it wasn't crowded. There were definitely crowds there. But I kid you guys not, there was no point when I was in Super Nintendo World that I felt overwhelmed by the crowds. I don't know if that's because of the design of the land. I feel like it does have something to do with it, because one of the elements of the land's design that I really appreciate is how explorable it is. And so that means that everyone on the walk, who's in the land, they could be in line for an interactive game. A lot of them are obviously doing Mario Kart, or they could just be up exploring. And I think that's a really good kind of distribution of the crowds. And I don't know. I really feel like I really had a great experience, a great first impression with Super Nintendo World. Mario Kart, I will say it plays way like videos. It's one of those attractions, like videos just do not do it justice at all. Like once you actually have those visors on and you're seeing the characters and you're in those environments, and the gameplay of Mario Kart is what really stood out to me. Because I'm telling you, the gameplay just has that Nintendo seal of quality to it. They might not explain it the best, but if you actually do some research and know what you're doing, which the fact that two of my friends had already done it and were kind of talking about the do's and don'ts, that definitely helped. Yeah. Also, the interactive stuff, the interactive games and whatnot, I mean, just a fantastic addition to the land. Just fantastic. And it was much less of a crowd control issue than I thought it would be. Much less of an issue. Like, I think by far the most popular game is the Piranha Plant one, because that is the one where it's like, it's right when you walk in from Princess Peach's castle. It's got the really big animatronic Piranha Plant. It's kind of a weenie to a certain extent. I got through that line in like half an hour, which really, all things considered, is nothing. Was there a little bit of standing involved? Yeah, sure. That kind of sucked. But man, I mean, when you talk about something that in theory should have a very, very crap capacity, the way in which they were able to cycle people through those games and not only do it efficiently, but also somehow do it in a way where every person was getting a personalized experience. It wasn't like they were just herding cattle like it felt like at Disney. And so this leads to my final, like, another just amazing cast member moment was the Piranha Plant game. If you guys don't know, it's very much a game that's kind of designed for multiple players because you have to like run around and hit all these different alarm clocks. And the optimal way to do it is because the actual area that the game takes place in is pretty spread out. The optimal way to do it is to have different people stationed at different parts. So as I was going up to do it, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, okay, like, I hope I don't just fail at this, because I definitely was going for the 3 keys, and I didn't want to just like waste a half hour waiting in line. You know what I mean? Like I was actually thinking game when it came to that. And so I get up to the front of the line. The cast member asked me how many I'm part of. I just say 1, and the dude just without question just springs into action. Like, okay, we're gonna get this person to help you. You're gonna kick ass. And it was just like, it was genuinely heartwarming for me as someone who, it's like, honestly, as I get older, I used to be better about solo travel as far as social anxiety goes. I feel like the older I get, the more cognitive I am that it's, I don't want to say it's weird. It's not, but I don't know. I have issues with anxiety in terms of like being in other people's way. And I feel like if I'm with a second person, then it's less of an issue. But yeah, no, Priest, we're getting Tiki the one. That's exactly what it felt like. It was like, the guy asked, like, do you want someone to play with you? And I was like, I was like, that'd be great if possible, but like, I don't really want to put you guys out of your way. And the guy was like, no, like we're doing this, man. Like, let's do it, you and me. Like, it wasn't even just that he was helping me; it was his attitude about it. You know what I mean? And goddamn, I mean, oh, I don't. I'm genuinely tearing up a little because, again, I'm sure that case by case interactions with cast members like this, where they go out of their way to help people, do happen at Disney. But genuinely, it feels like Universal, that is the standard that they are trying to reach. Whereas with Disney, it very much feels like the memo they got from management was as many people in and out as you can. It literally feels like every single position at Disney is in some ways cattle wrangling. And yeah. So in conclusion, I am planning Disneyland Paris. Not going to lie, I'm a little bit worried about that. I haven't heard the best things about that park from an operation standpoint. It can't get much worse, can it? But with that Disneyland Paris trip, I probably wouldn't even be taking it if Efteling wasn't also in the cards, and Efteling is indeed in the cards. I'm honestly, as much as I'm looking forward to individual attractions at Paris, like Phantom Manor, of course, that's a huge bucket list thing. Efteling is like that. That's the thing of that trip. Like that, I am looking forward to Efteling on a whole way more than Disneyland Paris. So, Epic Universe is obviously right around the corner. Yeah, you can take the train to Disneyland Paris. I'm going to be meeting with my my buddy who's actually stationed in Italy right now, and he has a car, so hence why we can even do Efteling. But yeah, that is nice that you could take the train there. So obviously Epic Universe is coming up, and I have all the confidence in the world in Universal to pull that off without a hitch. I really do. So much so that I do, like, assuming that Disneyland Paris doesn't eat up too much of my budget, I really do want to try and be there opening day for Epic Universe. Opening day. Just because I think it would be really, really exciting and really special to actually be at a park for an opening day. It was really cool to do Runaway Railway on that opening day, but a park would just go above and beyond. I tried to speak the little French I knew at Pirates, but luckily the cast members know French and English. That's good to know. I'm definitely going to try and take like a Babbel course on French or something. And I'm going to have to look up what language they use at Efteling. I'm pretty sure it's Dutch over there. It's Netherlands, right? So that would be Dutch. Anyways. All right. Guys, I think that's about it. And I also just want to say this is really not great. It's really not. It's just pretty basic lime taffy. It's nothing special. If you're gonna get it for the packaging. All right. So big thanks to Priest, Monkey, and Z&K for joining me here. And yeah, I wish I had better things to report on with Disneyland, but you know, at the very least, I did have some very positive experiences at Knott's and Universal to kind of counteract it. So yeah. All right. Well, that's it, guys. Insert track switch joke here.